IVM.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to another episode of All Things Policy, where we discuss policy issues of importance to help you to make sense of all the news that you read. I am Priyal and I work with the research group at Takshashila, focusing on health and life sciences vertical. As we all know, the world came to a standstill in March 2020, forcing all of us to rework our lives. While there has been hope for adults with the vaccine, one of the worst affected groups have been the kids. It has altered their lives like no other. One of the very important conversations over the past few months has been about vaccinating the kids and how safe they are. To discuss this, I have with me Suman, who is a program manager at Takshashila Institution and also a parent. Welcome, Suman.
Hey, thanks, Priyal. It's such a pleasure to be recording this podcast with you first time. Yeah, so kids are turning out to be very important stakeholders in the COVID-19 problem. Of course, with the kids, since they are not deemed to be capable of making their own decisions, we as parents stand in, and as policymakers, parents then become important stakeholders. So if you're trying to understand stakeholders, engaging with them, etc., all these are important parts of public policy. If you want to learn more about these public policy nuances, do consider joining our graduate certificate in public policy program. The Takshashila is an independent, non-partisan think tank in the School of Public Policy. The GCPP is a 3-month program that is tailored specifically for people who want to understand the news around us, who wants to make sense of the news around us. Okay? All courses are online and you can take them from anywhere. So admissions to our next cohort are now open. So the application deadline is 28th August. Do visit www.takshashila.org.in to find out more. So coming back, Priyal, one of the very important conversations over the past few months has been vaccinating kids and how safe they are. Going back to vaccines, we need to take a step back and understand that vaccines do help. Okay? Can you just summarize all that has happened with COVID-19 and the vaccines till date, the COVID-19 vaccines specifically?
Thank you for the question, Suman. Yes, going back to the basics, we all know that vaccines do help. Now, studies have shown that COVID-19 vaccines are effective at keeping you from getting COVID-19. And getting the COVID-19 vaccine will also help keep you from getting seriously ill, even if you do get the virus. These vaccines essentially teach our immune systems how to recognize and fight the virus that causes the disease. And it typically takes about 2 weeks after vaccination for the body to build the immunity and protection against the virus that causes COVID. Now, different types of vaccines work in different ways to offer protection, but with all types of vaccines, the body is left with the supply of memory T lymphocytes as well as B lymphocytes that will remember how to fight that virus in the future. Since it typically takes a few weeks after vaccination for the body to produce T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes, it is possible that a person could be infected with the virus that causes COVID-19 just before or just after vaccination and then get sick because the vaccine did not have enough time to provide protection. Now, there are various vaccines that are available today, different types of vaccines. vaccines like mRNA vaccines, for example, the Moderna vaccine, the DNA vaccine, for example, the Zydus Cadila vaccine, and vector vaccines like the Oxford AstraZeneca's Covishield vaccine. These are all available in the market today and have been used for vaccination against COVID-19.
Yeah, this is a background or for vaccines in general. What is the update on COVID-19 for kids, in a very broad worldwide sense?
So worldwide, a lot of clinical studies have been happening on the vaccinations. Now, the Pfizer BioNTech phase 3 clinical trial began in the late July 2020, and it recruited participants that aged 12 and over. In March 2021, Pfizer and BioNTech dosed the first healthy children in global phase 1, 2, and 3 continuous study to learn and understand if the vaccine can produce an immune response against COVID-19 and if it is safe in children aged 6 months to 11 years. Now, the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine has not been approved or licensed by the US FDA, that is the Food and Drug Administration, but has been authorized for emergency use by FDA under emergency use authorization to prevent COVID-19 for or use in individuals 12 years of age and older. And the emergency use of this product is only authorized for the duration of the declaration that circumstances exist justifying the authorization of emergency use of this medical product, unless the declaration is terminated or authorization is revoked sooner.
Yeah, so you're suggesting that all of these are available as vaccines only till such time that we have this pandemic exists,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, just narrowing it a little further, where are we in India on this? Whatever you gave was a worldwide scenario. What is the India scene on the vaccine?
In India also there's a lot of vaccination trials that are happening. Now, the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, that is AIIMS director Randeep Guleria, said that the results of the trials for Covaxin are expected to be released by September. The Covaxin, which is Bharat Biotech's vaccine, is in the clinical trial in its final stage, and for Covaxin, the trial is being conducted in 3 phases by segregating the children into categories according to their age. Now, the first trial was started in the age group of 12 to 18 years, followed by the age group of 6 to 12 years old. Now, the trials of children between ages of 2 to 6 years are currently undergoing. Now, once every participant has been injected with the second dose, the interim report is expected by the end of August. And on the basis of this interim trial report, a decision will be taken if the vaccination is safe to be used on children here in India.
Okay, so by the year end, we should have some vaccine for kids?
Yes, hopefully, yes. Now, Suman, I wanted to ask you, as a parent, do you consider it important for vaccination for vaccines? And if you consider it important, what changes in the COVID context?
Okay, as a parent, see, we are used to the concept. There is no hesitancy about the concept of vaccination per se. With time, with the spread of antenatal and postnatal care, everybody has gotten used to the idea that we will have vaccines. So it is on top of every parent's mind ever since we learned that we are going to be parents. Okay, a mother is used to tetanus shots in her pregnancy. She's used to a few other vaccines that are given. Similarly, when a child is born, we already, with the spread of institutional delivery, we already have a lot of vaccines that we give our children. And it comes with great confidence because we have seen over the years that vaccines truly help and protect children. If you are not seeing people with polio, if the instances of measles, diphtheria, all of these has come down, it is largely because of the vaccines. Okay, so great efforts have been made by the public health departments in India, especially to eradicate polio. So the parent community is fairly confident with regard to vaccines. If I have to generalize to a large extent, what changes in so to set it out as a parent, I don't think there would be too much vaccine hesitancy as such. But in the COVID context, because the vaccine is new, because the virus itself is new, and a lot of other things, there could be some doubts that would come into parents' mind in terms of safety or any of that. But one thing that as a parent I would really recommend to all other parents is that to look at the vaccine as something that will help prevent kids from getting COVID 19. It would reduce the spread of COVID 19. And it would, doing both of this would reduce other variants from emerging. Okay? So, this is why we need vaccines in the first place. For kids as such. Okay, but all this is from a health angle, which is paramount for any parent. Okay, but there are a lot of other factors that are also coming into play why we need to accelerate the vaccination. In the social context, if you see, you've been reading about how COVID itself has really upended lives for a lot of people in India. Okay? The worst hit are the children because it has affected their learning outcomes. It has affected their play, social interactions, and other such things. And if you go lower down the ladder of economic strength ability, you would see that it has really disproportionately affected children in that economic strata. Okay, a Pratham study recently showed that in India there are about 300 million people who are out of school because of COVID. Since you cannot hold classes, lessons, etc., children are dropping out of schools. It is affecting, and they're going out and earning, they're looking out for other forms of livelihood. And remember, in India, the school forms an important part of a child's routine because of the midday meal scheme too. Now, if the midday meal scheme is not being implemented, it means that children are out of school and looking for livelihood. We have also seen, I've also read reports where instances of child marriages are increasing because girl children are taken out of school at very crucial stages. And all this is really, really sad. When I look at it as a parent, it makes me, feel terrible that, lesser privileged children are not able to carry out, are not able to be where they're supposed to be only because we have not vaccinated enough number of people. So for me, the larger problem is the vaccination program as a whole. We are at 10% or so of completely vaccinated people, people who have got both doses of vaccination. Whichever route we need to get kids into school, whichever route we take, I'm not saying this is an either or situation. You only focus on one and leave the other. But we need to ensure that vaccination rates increase for the general public. And on the side, we need to make sure that even children, there is a lot of talk about whether they really need it, etc., because they're least affected. But we need to keep the conversation going. We need to keep the studies going on the vaccination for children. Ultimately, it's the comfort level that teachers, caregivers, parents, etc., will on how comfortable they feel about sending children to school. And only when this vaccination issue is sorted, we can get to some form of offline setting. So it's not just a health issue. It's for parents. It's both the health, education of their children. So that's my long rant about this. So I've been reading a lot about vaccinations in India, the kind of things that are permitted. You should you have some information about the kind of vaccines. Would you be able to throw light on vaccinations that are permitted in India?
As of now, so on Friday, which was the 20th of August 2021, the news came out that the first COVID-19 DNA vaccine, that is ZyCoV-D, by Zydus Cadila, has been approved by the Drugs Controller General of India, DGCI, for a 3-dose emergency vaccination in adults and children that are aged for 12 years and above. And this is the sixth authorized vaccine in India with an efficacy rate of 66.6% in a trial of over 28,000 volunteers. And I hope as we move on, we continue to have more vaccinations for kids as well. I'm hoping so. Suman, so like as a parent, in a COVID context, what is your take on how important is it to vaccinate your child? And if you were to vaccinate your child, I mean, you must, what factors do influence that?
Yeah, so I've already spoken on why it is important to vaccinate children.
Yeah.
But as parents, the most important thing we would look at is the safety of the children, in the sense that how safe is this vaccine? Will it lead to any kind of side effects? Are there long-term effects of the vaccine, etc.? Okay, large part of the vaccine, in terms of polio or other vaccines, a lot of these questions don't arise because people have seen the efficacy of this vaccine through the years. So for it, while it may not arise there could be some doubts that come to the as regards to the safety of the COVID vaccine, side effects, if any, etc. Also, strength of the vaccine. Would you give the same dose of vaccine as you give to the adults to the children? That is another factor probably. But as children go older, as in if you're saying you're going to vaccinate 12 plus, I think that will become a lesser kind of a thing because they're closer to adulthood than infants. I think the most important part of what would influence parents is efficacy and reliability of data. Okay, so I'm seeing all these news about Zydus and this and that, but I don't see the trials data being published in a very transparent manner. So once there is a lot of opacity in this kind of reporting, what comes to, it's just but natural for a parent to second guess the results. Is it really safe? What are they hiding? These kind of questions do come into the minds of parents. So I think the more transparent the data is with regard to the trials, the more confidence parents will have if they have to, if they are given a choice about vaccinating kids. Okay, so I think these are some factors on top of my mind that would affect my decision to vaccinate my child.
Thank you so much, Suman, for this insightful conversation. So to summarize what we have discussed in this podcast, here are our key final takeaways. One is to accelerate adult vaccination. We need to have...
So when we are talking about accelerating adult vaccination,
yes,
the point, why does that affect children so much? Because then, first of all, the spread of the virus is lower. So the effect on children will be lower. Secondly, it gives confidence in all other matters to let your children to go to school or to go to play or any of that. So that confidence building measure is got only by accelerating adult vaccination.
And second thing would be to continue the trials on kids and expand the scope of trials, because that's also very important. Another important takeaway is that we need more information campaign on need for vaccinations. Parents need to be educated and sort of given more information about the vaccinations and how they are going to take place and everything, all the details about it. And another very, very, very important thing that needs to be given a lot of importance is to publish the data on trials and transparency of the data so that parents can make their own informed decisions about this.
Yes, I think that is about it.
Yes.
But I sincerely hope that we will be, able to increase vaccination rates across all age groups and, focus on trials for children.
Yes. Thank you so much, Suman, for joining with me on this podcast.
Thank you, Priyal.
Yeah, this was very insightful and very informative. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takstashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On the first episode of Last Brand Standing, learn all about the intriguing battles between Tata Motors and Maruti Suzuki with hosts Anupam and Ambi, hosts of other shows on the IVM Podcast Network, Besa Vesa, and the Sponge Podcast. Great show that I think you really enjoy. We would also like to announce our collaboration with Hunts, India's most widely read literary magazine. Hunts Vani is now available in audio version on IVM Podcast. Do check it out. On Tere Mere Raste, Keshav tells us how people lived underground in Turkey's Keymakli city for generations. Varun introduces us to the world of audio advertising with Stas Tushinsky on Advertising is Dead. How can influencers shift from advertising to paid content? Siddharth Deshmukh tells us on Smarter with Sid. And on the Wire Talk, Siddharth talks to A.D. Singh about how badly restaurants are hit during the lockdown. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any other show for that matter, please do tell a friend. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week, Ciet, Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quater, CoinSwitch, Kuber, and Intuit India. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Do you like true crime stories? Do you like to learn about the people behind some horrible, awful crimes? More specifically, women that may have committed these crimes. Actually, Indian criminals that are women? Then we'd like to welcome you to our podcast, Misconduct. My name is Raghavi. And I am Nisha. We cover themes like murder, dacoity, drug trafficking, financial fraud, kidnapping, and many more. You can catch us every Wednesday on the IVM Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcast.